My name is Raymond Turner, 76 years old now. I live quietly in a small town near Savannah, Georgia, where the moss drapes low over the oak trees, and the air smells like salt and memory. Once I was a telegraph lineman, a man who spent most of his life connecting others through wires stretched across the country. Funny how I could connect everyone else, yet miss what was breaking right inside my own home. The story I'm about to tell isn't easy. It's one I buried deep for decades. But now, with time softening my bones and sharpening my conscience, I feel I must share it. Maybe to ease the weight, or maybe to warn someone else who might be blind like I was. I spent half my life traveling from town to town, climbing poles, fixing signals, and decoding messages in dots and dashes. Every time I left, I told myself it was for my family, my wife Clara, and our boy Eli. They were my reason for every mile I drove, every storm I worked through. Eli was my shadow when he was small, quiet, gentle, the kind of boy who'd ask before taking a cookie and whisper, "Thank you," like it was a prayer. I thought his quietness came from me. I was the same way growing up. Clara used to say he was sensitive. "A thinker, not a fighter," she'd say with a smile. But over time, her tone changed. She'd call him too soft, too slow, or a dreamer who'll never survive this world. When I came home from trips, Eli would run to hug me, but then he'd quickly back away as if afraid of taking up space. His shoulders always seemed tense, like he was bracing for something. "Just a phase," Clara would say whenever I mentioned it. "He's dramatic, Ray. Don't spoil him." I wanted to believe her. I did believe her for far too long. Clara had grown more religious since we moved to Georgia. Every night, at exactly 9, she'd take Eli into his room for what she called devotion time. She said she wanted to raise him right, teach him values, discipline, and faith. "He needs a strong hand," she'd say. The door always stayed closed. She claimed prayer was sacred, between a mother and her child. I never questioned it. Maybe I didn't want to. I was a man raised to trust, not to pry. But after every prayer session, Eli came out pale and quiet. He'd slip straight into bed without a word. Sometimes I'd hear him whispering in his sleep, begging for something I couldn't make out. Once, when I asked him about it, he just said, "Mom says I need to be better, Dad." Those words should have chilled me, but I brushed them off as childish guilt. Maybe he forgot his homework or acted up in class. I had no idea what those prayers really meant. My childhood had been simple and warm. I grew up along the Carolina coast, son of a fisherman, raised on stories and salt water. My father was a quiet man who taught me that you don't have to speak loudly to be strong. When I was old enough to leave home, I took my mother's blessing and my father's pocket knife and headed north to work with the telegraph company. It was in Charleston that I met Clara. She worked in a small diner near the telegraph station, always with a ribbon in her hair and that smile that could light up any night shift. I'd sit at the counter, order coffee I didn't need, just to talk to her. She was educated, read poetry, dreamed of being a teacher. I fell for her words before her face. When we married, we didn't have much, just a rented apartment, a second-hand radio, and big dreams. She wanted a family. I wanted to give her the world. When she told me she was expecting, I thought life couldn't get any brighter. I imagined holding our child, teaching him about the stars and the sea. I promised I'd never let harm come to him. But promises are easy when you don't yet know the kind of harm that can live inside your own walls. The day Eli was born, a storm hit the coast. Thunder roared like cannons, rain beating on the roof as Clara screamed in labor. When I finally held him, small, red-faced, crying, I thought I was holding a miracle. His tiny fists opened and closed as if tapping invisible Morse code, like he was already speaking my language. I remember laughing and saying, "He's going to be just like his old man." Clara just stared at him quietly. No smile, no tears, just a look I couldn't read, and that should have been my first warning. As the years passed, her moods swung like the tides. Some days she'd be gentle and kind, others sharp as glass. And every time I left for work, I saw that flicker in Eli's eyes, that silent question, "Do you really have to go, Dad?" And every time, I told him, Don't worry, son. You're safe here. How wrong I was. The first time I heard what really happened behind that closed door, I froze. But when I learned what she called prayer, I wished I had never believed her lies. The older Eli grew, the more I noticed how the light in him started to fade. He was around 7 when the change became undeniable, that spark in his eyes replaced by quiet obedience. He no longer laughed at my silly fishing jokes or talked about the constellations I taught him to find. He moved like a shadow through the house, careful not to disturb a single thing. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe my long work trips were making him lonely. Maybe he just missed me. But there was something else. Something deeper. Something that made the air in that house feel heavier every time I returned. Clara had become almost fanatical about her faith by then. The nightly devotions she shared with Eli had grown longer. At 9 sharp, she'd take him to his room, lock the door, and wouldn't come out for nearly an hour. When I asked what they prayed about, she'd smile tightly and say, "Sins, Raymond. I'm teaching him to be pure." I'd chuckle awkwardly, thinking she meant childish mistakes. A bad grade, a forgotten chore. But deep down, her words left an ache I couldn't explain. Sometimes I'd hear muffled voices behind that closed door. Clara's stern tone, Eli's trembling responses. When I asked about it later, she said, "Prayer isn't always gentle, Ray. The Lord disciplines those he loves." I wanted to argue, but I didn't. I was tired. Work was demanding. I told myself every family had their way of raising a child. One evening, after returning from a week repairing telegraph lines in Alabama, I found Eli sitting on the back porch, staring at the dirt beneath his feet. "Hey, champ," I said, handing him a wooden toy train I'd carved for him. "You miss me?" He looked up and smiled faintly. "Yeah, Dad, a lot." But when I hugged him, I felt him flinch. His whole body tightened, as if my touch might hurt him. I pulled back, startled. "You okay, son?" He nodded quickly. "Just tired." When Clara came out, she was her usual polished self. Apron clean, hair tied neatly. "He's fine," she said, waving her hand. "He fell during recess. He's such a clumsy boy." Something in her tone made me uneasy, but I didn't press it. That night, I slept poorly, haunted by the image of Eli's frightened eyes. A few days later, I got a note from his teacher saying Eli was distracted in class, barely spoke, and seemed afraid when anyone raised their voice. "Maybe it's just adjustment issues," the teacher had written. When I showed the note to Clara, she laughed softly. "They don't understand him, Ray. He's sensitive. But I'm fixing it." Fixing. That word stuck to me like a thorn. Clara began inviting a woman named Mrs. Whitman over, a church friend who often spoke of cleansing the soul through correction. I remember hearing them whispering late one night. "The boy's spirit is weak," Mrs. Whitman said. "You must be firm. Break his will before the devil takes root." And Clara, in a calm voice that still chills me, replied, "Oh, I will. The Lord gave me the strength." The next day, Eli didn't come down for breakfast. I found him in his room, sitting on the floor with his knees pulled up to his chest. When I touched his shoulder, he winced. "Son, what's wrong?" He shook his head, eyes glistening. "Nothing, Dad. Just don't tell Mom I'm late." That's when I noticed the faint mark near his arm, the kind that didn't come from a fall. I wanted to ask about it, but Clara walked in. Her face was composed, her voice sweet. "Come on, Eli. It's prayer time." He looked at me with a silent plea that went straight through me. I almost told her to stop, to leave him alone. But I didn't. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself she loved him. I told myself all the lies a man tells when he's afraid to admit something's wrong in his own home. Weeks passed like that. The house felt like it was holding its breath. Every evening, the same ritual. The clock struck 9, the door shut and silence fell, broken only by faint whispers and the creak of the floorboards. One night, as I prepared for another work trip, Eli grabbed my arm. His small hand trembled. "Dad," he said, his voice cracking, "do you really have to go tomorrow?" I smiled gently, ruffling his hair. "You know I have to, son." It's my job. He looked at Clara, then back at me, fear flickering in his eyes. Please don't go this time. I laughed nervously, thinking he was just missing me. But that night, as I packed my bag, I heard him whisper through the crack of his door, "When you're not here, she changes." Those words echoed in my mind long after I left for my trip. And by the time I came back, I realized how terribly true they were. The night I came home early, hours before Clara expected me, I heard sounds no father should ever hear, and that was the moment I finally opened the wrong door. It was late summer of 1973, the air in Savannah heavy and restless, carrying the smell of rain. I'd been away on a short trip to repair a storm-damaged line outside Montgomery. According to Clara, I wasn't supposed to be home until Thursday, but fate or something greater had other plans. A friendly truck driver offered me a ride that got me home a day early. I remember thinking how happy Eli would be to see me. I could already picture him running into my arms. When I arrived, the lights were on, but no one came to the door. I used my spare key, stepping quietly into the house. The smell of dinner still lingered, fried chicken and cornbread, but the atmosphere was cold. Then I heard it. From down the hallway, Clara's voice. Low at first, then sharp. "You'll pray twice tonight. Do you hear me? Your teacher said you failed every single math problem. Every one." I froze. Her tone wasn't scolding, it was venom. Then Eli's voice, soft, trembling. "I tried, Mom. I really tried. I just forgot the steps." A thud followed, the sound of something striking the table, maybe her hand. "Don't talk back to me. You think excuses will save you? You're just like your father, weak and slow." I felt the blood drain from my face. It was the first time I'd ever heard her speak about me that way in front of our son. I should have walked in. I should have shouted. But I didn't. Instead, I stood there, hidden in the hallway shadows, my heart pounding against my ribs like a warning drum. Eli whimpered, "Please, Mom, I'll do better. I promise." "Promises mean nothing to the Lord when they come from lazy lips," she hissed. "Now on your knees." The sound of a belt sliding through loops, that sound, still lives somewhere deep in my skull. Then came the strikes. Once, twice, followed by muffled sobs. "Don't cry. Crying's for sinners," she snapped. "Say it again." "I'm sorry," Eli gasped. "Louder." "I'm sorry, Mom." My body trembled. My throat burned, but I couldn't move. It was as if fear and disbelief had tied me to the floor. Another strike, another cry, then her voice again, lower now, cold as stone. "If your father hears this, I'll make it worse next time. Understand?" Something inside me shattered. I stepped back, quietly opened the front door, and slammed it hard, pretending I was just arriving home. "Hey, I'm home early," I shouted, forcing a smile into my voice. Everything went silent. Seconds later, Clara appeared at the door of the hallway, her face rearranged into sweetness. "Ray, you scared me. We weren't expecting you tonight." Behind her, Eli peeked out, his eyes red and swollen. He rushed into my arms. "Dad, you're home." I hugged him tight, trying not to let him feel my shaking hands. Dinner was awkward. Clara talked endlessly about church events, as if nothing had happened. I pretended to listen, nodding at the right moments. Eli sat quietly, staring at his plate. Every now and then, Clara gave him that sharp, warning look, the kind that silences a soul. After dinner, when I offered to help Eli with his homework, Clara cut me off. "No need," she said. "He and I have our prayer time." She took him by the arm, too firmly, and led him to the room. The door shut, the key turned. I sat in the living room, pretending to read the newspaper, my heart hammering so loud I could barely hear the radio. Then I did what I'd never done before. I turned off the radio, crept down the hall, and pressed my ear to the door. First, whispers, Clara's voice repeating some twisted prayer. Then, "Say it, Eli. I am a disobedient boy who needs correction. I am a disobedient boy who needs correction," he echoed weakly. "I don't pay attention because I'm lazy. I don't pay attention because—" His voice broke. Because I'm lazy. The next sound wasn't prayer. It was punishment. The slap of leather. The choked sob of a child. Be quiet. If your father hears, he'll punish you too, she warned. That's when the scream came, sharp, terrified, real. And I moved. The door gave way under my shoulder, splintering open. What I saw inside will haunt me till my last breath. Eli was on the floor, curled up, his small hands over his face. Red marks striped his legs. Clara stood over him, belt in hand, her eyes blazing. Not with rage, but with righteousness. What are you doing? I roared, barely recognizing my own voice. She glared back at me. Discipline, Raymond. Something you've never understood. That night, the woman I'd loved became a stranger before my eyes. And as she spoke, I realized she wasn't done fighting me or our son. Clara's words sliced through the room like cold steel. Discipline, Raymond. Something you've never understood. I stood frozen for a second, my pulse pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. The belt in her hand trembled slightly, but her face was calm, frighteningly calm. Eli whimpered, pressing his body tighter into the corner. His knees were red and bruised. His breathing came in short, panicked bursts. I took a step forward. Put the belt down, Clara. She laughed. A bitter, hollow sound that sent chills up my spine. You think I enjoy this? I do it because you don't. You're always gone, chasing wires and storms. Someone has to make sure this boy grows up right. Right? My voice cracked. You call this right? He's terrified of you. Fear is the beginning of wisdom, she snapped, her eyes shining with a feverish kind of conviction. You wouldn't understand. You never had the strength to be firm. I moved past her, crouching beside Eli. He flinched as I reached for him, instinctively shielding his head. That moment, that single trembling movement, broke me. It's okay, son. I'm here. I whispered, my voice shaking. Nobody's going to hurt you again. He slowly looked up, tears clinging to his lashes. I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't mean to make her mad. You didn't do anything wrong, I said firmly, glaring at Clara. You hear me? Nothing. Clara's expression twisted. You're turning him against me now? After everything I've done for this family. Everything. I repeated, my throat burning. You've been torturing him. Torture? She scoffed. You've been gone so long you don't even know your own son. He lies. He disobeys. Stop. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Just stop. For a moment, silence filled the room, except for Eli's quiet sobbing. Then Clara's shoulders dropped slightly, her voice lowering. You don't understand, Ray. I can't let him grow up weak. This world will eat him alive. I'm doing what's necessary. Necessary? I echoed. What's necessary is love, not cruelty. I stood between her and Eli. Get out of this room. Her eyes widened in disbelief. What did you just say? You heard me. Leave. Now. She hesitated, searching my face as though looking for the man she once knew. When she realized he wasn't there anymore, something in her snapped. You think you can take my son away from me? She hissed. You think anyone will believe you? I'm the one who goes to church, who talks to the neighbors, who attends the school meetings. You're just the man who's never home. Her voice rose with each word until it echoed off the walls. Everyone sees me as the good mother, the devoted wife. Who do you think they'll trust? Me or you? I didn't answer. I just pointed toward the door. Get out. She stood there for a moment, her chest heaving. Then, with one last furious glare, she stormed past me and slammed the door behind her. The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. I turned back to Eli. He was shaking so badly I could hear his teeth chatter. I knelt beside him, gently brushing a hand through his hair. It's over now, son. She won't hurt you anymore. He stared at me with wide, wet eyes. She said if I told you, you wouldn't believe me, that you'd hit me too. The words stabbed deeper than any knife could. No, Eli. Never. I should have seen it. I should have. My voice cracked, and I couldn't finish the sentence. He leaned against me, his small body trembling. I held him there until he finally drifted off to sleep, his hands still gripping my shirt as if afraid I'd disappear. When I was sure he was resting, I went to the living room. Clara sat there on the couch, her hands folded neatly in her lap, as if nothing had happened. The calm on her face was more terrifying than her rage. "We need to talk," I said quietly. "There's nothing to talk about." "Yes, there is. What I saw tonight, it ends now. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to the authorities." Her head snapped up. "You wouldn't dare." "I already decided." She stood abruptly, her face flushing red. "You'll ruin us. You'll ruin me. Do you think anyone will believe your little story? You're going to regret this, Raymond." "No," I said, my voice steady for the first time that night. "The only thing I regret is not protecting him sooner." Her lips trembled, fury overtaking fear. "If you report me, I'll tell them you hit him too. That you abused me. I'll destroy you." I didn't flinch. "Say whatever you want. The truth will speak for itself." For a moment her eyes softened, just barely. "You'll see," she whispered. "You'll see what happens when you take a mother's child away." Then she grabbed her purse and walked out into the night. The door slammed behind her. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty doorway. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I walked into the sheriff's office with my son's truth in my hands. But I had no idea how deep Clara's lies already ran through our town. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The house was quiet except for the faint rhythm of the river wind brushing against the windows. For the first time in years, I didn't pack my work bag. I wasn't going anywhere, not until I made things right. Eli was still asleep in my bed, curled up beneath a blanket that seemed too big for his small frame. I watched him for a while, the faint bruise on his arm, the red marks fading into pale skin. It was a sight no father should ever see on his child. I poured myself a cup of coffee, but it tasted bitter. Everything did that morning. The walls, the silence, the memories. Then I took a deep breath, grabbed my hat, and walked out the door. The sheriff's office sat on the edge of town. A small brick building with a single flag swaying outside. Sheriff Earl Dawson, a tall man with a thick mustache and weary eyes, looked up when I stepped in. "Morning, Ray," he said. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Something worse," I replied. "I need to report what's been happening in my house." He studied my face, then gestured toward a chair. "Sit down. Tell me everything." So I did. I told him about the nightly prayers, the bruises, the fear. Every word felt like sandpaper scraping against my throat. At one point, I had to stop and steady myself. The sheriff didn't interrupt, just listened, jaw tightening as I spoke. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, sighing. "That's a heavy thing, Ray. Accusing your wife ain't small." "I know," I said. "But I'm not accusing her, Sheriff. I'm telling you the truth." He rubbed his temples, thinking. "We'll need proof, photos, testimony, doctor's report. You know how folks here are. They don't take kindly to family business being dragged through the mud." "I've got all the proof I need," I said. "You just have to see my boy." He nodded slowly. "I'll send Deputy Warren over to your place. We'll get the doctor to take a look." By the time I returned home, Mrs. Thompson, our next-door neighbor, was waiting on the porch. She was holding a basket of muffins, but her face looked pale. "Mr. Turner," she said quietly, "I heard shouting last night. I didn't want to pry, but is Eli okay?" I hesitated, then decided there was no point in hiding anymore. "No, he's not, but I'm going to make sure he will be." Her eyes watered. I should have said something sooner. I heard him crying before, but Clara said he had bad dreams. I didn't want to interfere. I put a hand on her shoulder. "You're not to blame. She fooled all of us." Deputy Warren showed up not long after, a camera slung around his neck. He spoke softly to Eli, asked if he could take a few pictures, for the record. My boy nodded bravely, biting his lip the whole time. The doctor, Dr. Hensley, arrived that afternoon. A kind older man with silver hair and steady hands. He examined Eli gently. "Some of these bruises are weeks old," he said grimly. "And others, well, they're newer. This didn't happen once or twice, Ray." I swallowed hard. "I know." He wrote his report and handed it to the deputy. "You'll want to keep this safe. It's not going to be easy, but you're doing the right thing." By evening, the story had already begun to leak. In small towns like ours, nothing stays hidden for long. People talk. At church, at the grocery store, by the riverbank. Some offered sympathy. Others just stared. One man at the diner muttered, "Ray's gone mad." Everyone knows Clara's a saint. That word, saint, burned through me. The following day, I went to Eli's school to talk to his teacher, Mrs. Bellamy. She met me at the door with concern already in her eyes. "Mr. Turner, I was hoping you'd come. I've been worried about Eli for months. I sent notes home, but—" "She never gave them to me," I said. Mrs. Bellamy pressed a hand to her chest. "I thought as much. He's such a gentle boy. Too afraid to speak sometimes. When I raised my voice the other day, he ducked like he expected to be hit. That's not normal, Mr. Turner." "I know," I said quietly. "I'm trying to fix it." That afternoon, I received a call from Sheriff Dawson. "Ray, we've spoken to the judge. He's granted a temporary protective order. Your wife's not to come near you or Eli until the investigation's done." I felt something I hadn't felt in years, relief. When I told Eli, he looked up at me with cautious hope. "She can't come back?" "Not for now," I said. "You're safe, son. I promise." He didn't say anything, just hugged me tight and started to cry. Not the fearful kind of crying I'd heard before, but the kind that washes years of pain away. That night, for the first time in forever, we slept peacefully. But deep down, I knew Clara wouldn't stay gone for long. Not a woman like her. I thought the worst was over. But the next time Clara came back, she wasn't alone, and she wasn't begging. She was fighting to take our son. A week passed in strange quiet. The house felt lighter, the shadows less suffocating. Eli began to smile again. Small, uncertain smiles at first, like he was testing the air to see if it was safe to breathe. We fished by the river behind the house, listened to the radio in the evenings, and for a brief moment, I almost believed peace had returned. But peace in my life never lasted long. It was a Sunday evening when the knock came. Slow, firm, familiar. When I opened the door, my heart sank. There she was, Clara, dressed neatly in her church clothes, a Bible clutched to her chest like a weapon. And beside her stood Reverend Howell, the town's preacher. "Raymond," the Reverend greeted, tipping his hat. "We'd like to have a word." Eli, who had been drawing at the kitchen table, froze. His pencil rolled off the page and onto the floor. Clara's eyes darted toward him, and for a moment, I saw that same cold glint I remembered too well, quickly masked by a trembling smile. "What do you want, Clara?" I asked, my voice even. She sighed softly. "I came to make peace. I've been praying, Ray. I realize I may have lost my temper that night." She looked down, feigning humility. "I want to fix this, for Eli's sake." I stepped aside just enough for her to see the protective order posted on the wall by the door. "You're not supposed to be here." The Reverend cleared his throat. "Now, Ray, surely we can resolve this as a family, through prayer and forgiveness. You know how gossip spreads. It's hurting all of you." I met his eyes. "You didn't see what I saw, Reverend." He frowned, shifting his weight. "Clara admits she may have gone too far, but she's a good Christian woman. The Lord forgives." "This isn't about forgiveness," I said sharply. "It's about safety." Clara's voice broke in, trembling, soft, too rehearsed. "You're twisting everything, Ray. I never meant to hurt him. You know that. He just doesn't listen. He lies sometimes, tells stories." That was when Eli spoke, the first time he'd ever interrupted an adult. "I don't lie." His voice was small but steady. Clara blinked, caught off guard. "Sweetheart, please. Don't say things you'll regret." Eli shook his head, his lips quivering. "You hurt me. You made me say I was bad. You said God wanted you to." The Reverend looked uneasy. Clara? Is that true? She turned pale. He's confused, Reverend. You know how children can be. I stepped forward. No, Reverend, he's not confused. He remembers every word. The tension in the room could have snapped a wire. Finally, the Reverend sighed. Perhaps I should go. This isn't my place to decide. But Clara wasn't done. Her mask cracked. Her voice turned sharp again. You can't take him from me. He's my son. Eli flinched behind me. I stood tall, steady. He's my son too. And I'm the one protecting him now. Her eyes darted between us. Mother and child separated by the truth she'd tried to bury. You'll regret this, Ray, she hissed. You think you've won, but you haven't. This town knows me. They know what kind of woman I am. They'll believe me before they ever believe you. Maybe they will, I said quietly. But the bruises don't lie. Clara's face twisted. Fury and panic blending into something almost unrecognizable. Reverend Howell gently placed a hand on her arm. Clara, let's go. This isn't helping. She jerked away, glaring at me one last time. You'll see, Raymond. I'll take back what's mine. And with that, she left, her heels striking the wooden porch like thunder fading into the night. When the door shut, Eli let out a shaky breath and clung to me. Is she coming back, Dad? Not if I can help it, I said, though the tremor in my voice betrayed my fear. That night, after Eli was asleep, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the fading embers in the fireplace. The wind outside carried the echo of church bells, hollow, distant, judgmental. I thought of the people at the Sunday service who smiled at Clara, called her a saint, who would whisper about me tomorrow. I didn't care about them anymore, but I knew she wasn't finished. Not by a long shot, because a woman like Clara didn't surrender, she plotted. And I could already feel a storm coming. The next morning, a letter arrived. One that would drag our pain from home into the courthouse. Clara wasn't just fighting me anymore. She was fighting for custody. 2 mornings later, I found the letter wedged in the mailbox. No return address, just my name written in Clara's delicate, slanted handwriting. I knew before opening it that peace was over. The letter was from her attorney. Petition for custody hearing, Clara Turner versus Raymond Turner. My hands shook as I read the rest. She'd accused me of mental instability, domestic abuse, and manipulating our child against her faith. Every lie she'd ever feared being caught in, she had turned and fired back at me. For a long time, I just sat there on the porch, staring at the letter while the morning light bled across the yard. Eli came out, rubbing his eyes. What's that, Dad? I folded the paper quickly. Just grown-up stuff, son. Nothing for you to worry about. But deep inside, I was terrified. Sheriff Dawson stopped by later that day. I heard about the court papers, he said grimly. She's moving fast. She's trying to rewrite the story, I said, pacing the floor. She's got half the church behind her. He nodded. Reverend Howell gave a statement already. Said he believes Clara's a devoted mother under stress. The judge is sympathetic to her. Sympathetic? I snapped. Did anyone read the doctor's report? He sighed. I filed it myself, Ray. But this is the South. Folks still think what happens inside a home should stay there. That night, after Eli fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at his drawings scattered across the wood. Most were of rivers, trees, stars, the kind of pictures children draw when they dream of freedom. But one drawing made my heart stop. It was a small stick figure, a boy with tears falling from his eyes, standing next to a tall figure holding something long and black. Underneath, he'd written in shaky letters, God doesn't like me. I didn't sleep after that. The court date came faster than I expected. The courthouse in Savannah was an old red brick building, its windows high and narrow, like eyes watching every soul who walked inside. Clara was already there, dressed in soft blue, her hair pinned back neatly. She looked fragile, almost saintly. Her lawyer, a slick man with polished shoes, greeted her with a smile that made my stomach turn. Eli sat beside me, clutching my hand tightly. I could feel his pulse racing through his small fingers. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The proceedings began. Clara's attorney went first. He painted a portrait of a troubled husband, absent from home for months at a time, leaving a lonely wife to manage a difficult child. He described Clara as a mother who may have over-disciplined, but only out of love. Then he turned the story on me, said I had anger issues, that I'd once slammed a door during a disagreement, and that I'd been emotionally distant and unstable. Each word hit harder than the last. I tried to speak, but my lawyer squeezed my arm. Wait your turn. When it was finally my chance, I told the truth, every detail I could manage without breaking down. I spoke about the bruises, the fear, the locked door. I showed the doctor's report, the sheriff's notes, the teacher's letter. Clara never looked at me once. When it was her turn to speak, she began to cry softly, her hands shaking just enough to look convincing. I only wanted my son to grow up with morals, she said through trembling lips. I never hurt him intentionally. My husband twisted everything. He's always been distant, always doubting me. The room grew still. People whispered from the benches. Then the judge asked Eli if he wanted to say anything. My heart almost stopped. He looked at me, scared, uncertain, then turned toward the judge. My mom says she loves me, but when she prays, it hurts. You could have heard a pin drop. Even the judge's pen froze midair. Clara's face drained of color. The judge cleared his throat. Thank you, son. That'll be enough. After a long, tense silence, he said, until further investigation, custody will remain temporarily with the father. Mrs. Turner, you will attend counseling and remain under court supervision. If the allegations are confirmed, permanent custody will be determined. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was hope. When we walked out, the reporters waiting outside swarmed us, their flashes blinding. I kept Eli close, shielding him. Through the chaos, Clara's voice cut through, sharp, desperate. You turned him against me. Ray, you'll burn for this. The deputies held her back, but her eyes followed me all the way down the courthouse steps, filled with fury that didn't belong to a mother, but to something darker. I thought the courtroom ended it all, but that night, someone tapped on Eli's window, whispering his name. And when I rushed in, the curtain was still moving. The days after the hearing felt like walking on cracked glass. On paper, the judge's ruling had protected us, but paper means nothing against obsession. Eli was quiet again. He didn't talk much about his mother, though sometimes I'd catch him looking toward the window at night, his expression distant. I knew he loved her. Children always find reasons to forgive. But love, in his case, had become tangled with fear. One evening, as I was locking up the house, I found a small white envelope wedged between the doorframe and the screen. No postage, no address, just one word scrawled across the front in shaky handwriting. Eli. My stomach tightened. Inside was a note written in blue ink. I forgive you, my sweet boy, but you need to come home to finish what we started. God is waiting. Mom. My hands went cold. I folded the letter and slipped it into my pocket, forcing a calm smile when Eli came into the room. You ready for dinner, champ? He nodded, but there was something haunted in his eyes. Dad, he whispered. Did Mom try to call me today? No. I lied softly. Why do you ask? He hesitated, looking down. Because last night, I heard her. That made my chest tighten. You heard her? What do you mean? He looked toward the window. She was outside. She said my name. I went cold all over. Eli, when did this happen? After you fell asleep. She told me to come out. She said God told her it's time to go home. I knelt beside him, gripping his shoulders. You didn't open the window, right? He shook his head quickly. No, but she kept whispering. That night, I sat by the window in the dark, shotgun across my lap. The moonlight spilled across the backyard, silver and still. Every creak, every rustle in the wind made my nerves jolt. Hours passed in silence, until something moved at the tree line. A shadow. I leaned forward, heart hammering. The shape lingered for a few seconds, then vanished into the dark. I didn't chase it. There was no need. I knew who it was. The next morning, I went straight to Sheriff Dawson's office. "She was here," I said. "At my house. Last night." He frowned. "You sure?" "I saw her, Earl. I've known that woman half my life. I know how she moves." He rubbed his jaw. "All right, I'll patrol the area tonight. Maybe she's trying to scare you, or—" He hesitated. "Maybe she's unraveling." "She already did," I muttered. That evening, Eli refused to sleep in his room. I didn't force him. We made up a small bed for him in the living room near the fireplace. I sat up beside him, pretending to read, until his eyes finally closed. Around midnight, I heard it again. A faint tap-tap-tap against the glass. I turned slowly. The curtains swayed, the window half-lit by moonlight. I reached for the shotgun, but froze when I heard a whisper, soft, almost loving. "Eli, come to me, sweetheart." My blood ran cold. I moved to the window, yanking the curtains aside. But there was no one there, just the faint imprint of a hand on the glass. I went outside, barefoot, flashlight in hand. The night air was thick with humidity. Crickets chirped somewhere in the distance, oblivious to the dread pulsing in my chest. I scanned the yard, nothing. No movement, no sound. Then I saw it. Footprints in the damp soil beneath the window. Barefoot, small, feminine. I followed them to the edge of the woods behind our house. And there, caught on a low branch, was a piece of blue fabric. Her favorite church dress. I pocketed it, heart pounding, and went back inside. Eli was awake now, trembling under the blanket. "Was it her?" he whispered. I nodded. "But she's gone now." He started crying quietly. "Why won't she stop?" I sat beside him, pulling him close. "Because she's lost, son. Some people don't stop until they destroy everything, even themselves." He looked up at me, tears streaking his cheeks. "Dad, will she find us again?" I wanted to tell him no. I wanted to promise that monsters disappear when daylight comes. But I couldn't. Not this time. That night, I didn't sleep at all. Every creak of the house felt like a warning. Every gust of wind sounded like her voice. By dawn, I'd made up my mind. We couldn't stay there anymore. I packed our bags quietly, careful not to wake Eli. Then, as I stood at the doorway one last time, I noticed something on the front porch. Written in chalk, faint but unmistakable. "God forgives. Do you?" We fled that morning, but running didn't end it. Because you can't outrun someone who believes God himself is guiding them straight to your door. We left just as the sky began to lighten, that faint silver glow stretching over the horizon. I didn't tell Eli where we were going, just that we needed a little trip. He didn't ask questions. He just sat quietly in the passenger seat, hugging his old teddy bear. As I drove, the trees blurred past like ghosts. Every turn of the wheel felt like shedding a layer of our old life. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was following us. I headed north toward Augusta, where an old friend, Henry Lawson, lived. He'd worked with me years ago on the telegraph lines, a man I trusted more than anyone left in this world. By mid-morning, we reached his small farmhouse. Henry was standing on the porch, coffee in hand, his gray hair sticking up in the wind. He looked surprised but glad to see me. "Ray Turner," he said with a slow grin. "You look like you've seen hell itself." "Something close," I said. "We need a place to stay for a while." He didn't ask questions, just nodded and waved us inside. "You and the boy take the spare room. You're safe here." For a few days, things felt calm again. Henry's wife, Marjorie, cooked breakfast every morning and told Eli stories about her garden, making him laugh for the first time in weeks. At night, I sat on the porch with Henry, staring at the stars. "You think she'll come after you?" he asked quietly. "I know she will," I said. "She's not the kind to let go." He exhaled through his nose. "You call me crazy, but maybe it's time to stop running and start fighting back. File for full custody. Get her out of your life for good." "I tried that," I muttered. "She doesn't fight fair. She twists the truth till people believe her lies." He leaned back, staring at the dark fields. "Then you tell the truth louder." I wanted to believe him, but Clara wasn't just a liar. She was a believer, and believers don't stop. That evening, while Marjorie and Eli were baking cookies, the phone rang. Henry answered, but the moment he heard the voice on the other end, his expression changed. He handed the phone to me. "It's for you, Ray." I hesitated before taking it. "Hello." At first, there was nothing but static. Then, a soft, trembling voice. "You took him away from me, Ray. You think God will forgive that?" I gripped the receiver. "Clara, stop this. You need help." "I'm beyond help," she said calmly. "I just want my family back. You can't keep him forever." "Don't come near us again," I warned. "If you do, You'll what?" she interrupted, her tone suddenly sharp. "Shoot me? The mother of your child." Silence stretched. Then she whispered something that chilled me to my bones. "I already know where you are." The line went dead. I turned toward the window. The fields behind Henry's house stretched into shadow, motionless under the fading sun. But I could feel it, that same presence, that same waiting. I told Henry everything. He checked the locks, loaded his rifle, and said he'd stay up that night with me. We kept watch from the porch, the night thick with humidity and crickets. Every now and then, I thought I saw movement at the edge of the field. A flicker of white fabric, a shadow gliding between the trees. "Could be a deer," Henry said, though his grip on the rifle tightened. Around 2 in the morning, Eli woke screaming. I ran inside, finding him trembling, pointing at the window. "She was here," he cried. "She was standing there, smiling." I rushed to the window. Nothing. Just the dark fields and the faint hum of insects. "Dad," he whispered. "She said she's going to take me home tonight." I held him close, trying to steady his shaking. "She's not taking you anywhere, son. Not ever again." We stayed awake till dawn. The next morning, I found fresh footprints by the back fence. Smaller than mine, barefoot again. And in the dirt, written with a stick, "Home isn't yours to keep." I took Eli and left Henry's place that afternoon. We drove west, no destination, just distance. Every mile felt like a temporary victory, but I knew she was still out there, somewhere behind us, watching, waiting. And when I stopped for gas outside of Macon, I noticed something that froze me completely. Taped to the windshield, fluttering in the wind, a photograph of Eli, taken from outside Henry's house. I thought I could keep running, but the truth is, some nightmares don't chase you. They live inside you. And the night I finally faced Clara was the last night I saw her alive. We drove through half of Georgia that day, stopping only when exhaustion forced me to. By nightfall, we reached a roadside motel just outside Columbus, the kind of place where nobody asks questions and the neon sign flickers more than it shines. Eli was half asleep in the passenger seat when I parked. His small hand clutched that old teddy bear, its fur worn from years of comfort and fear. Inside, the air smelled like bleach and cigarette smoke. I locked the door twice, pushed a chair under the handle, and drew the curtains shut. We'd been on the run for nearly 2 weeks now. I'd left behind everything. My job, my house, my name in that small town. But I hadn't left the fear that followed us like a shadow. Eli fell asleep quickly. I sat by the window again, the shotgun across my knees. Every sound outside, every passing car, every barking dog, made my pulse quicken. I was so tired of waiting for her. But I knew she would come. And she did. It was sometime after midnight when I heard it, the crunch of gravel beneath tires. Headlights swept across the blinds for a brief second, then disappeared. I got up slowly, heart pounding. A faint knock echoed from the door. 3 taps, then silence. I raised the gun, my voice barely above a whisper. "Who's there?" No answer. Another set of taps, softer this time. Then, a familiar voice. "Ray, please. I just want to talk." My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't heard her say my name like that in years. Gentle, broken, almost human. "Clara," I said, gripping the gun tighter. "Go home. This isn't the way." "We are home," she said from the other side. "You took everything from me, Ray. My boy, my family, my faith. But God told me what I must do to make it right." Don't you dare come near that door, I warned. I don't have to, she whispered. He'll come to me. And before I could move, I heard Eli's voice behind me. Mom! I spun around. He was standing in the dim light of the lamp, eyes half open, his small frame trembling. She's outside, he murmured. She said she forgives me. Eli, I said, my voice cracking, listen to me. You can't go near that door. He blinked, confused, caught between dream and reality. But she's crying, Dad. Then came the sound, soft sobbing from the other side of the wall. It broke me for a moment, the sound of pain mixed with madness. I took a deep breath. Stay here, son, I said. Don't move. I stepped toward the door, heart thundering, and shouted, Clara! It's over. You need help, not him, not me. You! Help? She echoed, laughter breaking through the tears. You think anyone can help me now? God already made his choice. The doorknob rattled violently. Eli screamed. I pushed him back toward the bed. Call the police, I yelled, though we had no phone. The door cracked once, twice, and then burst open under the force of her shoulder. She stood there in the doorway, hair matted, face pale, eyes wild with something far beyond reason. In her hand, she held a small kitchen knife. Clara, I said, raising the shotgun but not aiming it yet. Don't do this. Her voice was trembling, but her steps were steady. I'm not here to hurt him. I just need to take him home. He is home, I shouted. This is his home now. Not your madness. Not your prayers. She took one more step, then another, and something inside me snapped. Not in anger, but in realization. This was the woman I'd once loved. The woman who danced barefoot on our wedding night, who'd laughed in the summer rain. That woman was gone now, swallowed by something she couldn't fight. Clara, I whispered, please, don't make me do this. Her eyes softened for just a heartbeat, and in that moment, she looked human again. Then she turned the blade toward herself. God will understand, she said softly. The gun went off before I even realized I'd pulled the trigger. The sound was deafening. She fell backward, her body crumpling near the doorway, the knife clattering from her hand. For a long time, I just stood there, smoke hanging in the air, my body frozen. Eli was crying, clutching my leg. Dad, what happened to Mom? I couldn't answer. I just held him, shaking, the truth too heavy for words. When the police arrived, they found me sitting by her side, my hand still holding hers. I don't remember calling them. Maybe Henry did. Maybe God did. They ruled it self-defense. No charges. No trial. Just an ending carved in silence. Years have passed since that night. Eli grew up, strong and kind. Everything I'd prayed he'd become. He doesn't talk about her anymore. But sometimes I catch him looking at old photographs, searching for something I can't give him. As for me, I still hear her sometimes. In dreams, in thunder, in the hollow quiet of empty rooms. And I always wonder, if I'd come home sooner, if I'd seen what was happening before it was too late, would she still be alive? Or was this always the way it had to end?